Alright, good? Hell yeah. Alright, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sam Gomez. I'm a woodwind doubler here in the Gainesville, North Florida area. And today I have kind of a bucket list instrument, one that I've always wanted to play, one that I've always wanted to have. And it's sitting on that stand right over there. And I have another part of it in here. And I came across this. I was talking to a buddy of mine at a music convention, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I have one of these," because I had my bass saxophone out, and he's like, "Oh yeah, a bass sax. You know, I've got one of these," and I was like, "Really? That's really cool." So we started talking, and I'm like, "I'd like to borrow that from you one day, using my sax choir." So that's the whole reason I have this. So without, playing the pronoun game and a whole lot more else, I'm going to go ahead and bring it on over here. Pardon, my AC unit is on. So this right here is a Conn E-flat Contrabass Sarrusophone. This instrument was graciously lent to me by my friend in Jacksonville. I think I already said that. But it's kind of on a long-term loan, and this is going to be taking the contrabass saxophone voice in my choir. I've got everything from sopranino to bass, and some of the stuff that we're playing actually calls for contrabass saxophone. Excuse me. And those are kind of hard to come by. I mean, these are almost even more so hard to come by. Maybe just a little bit easier, but there weren't a whole lot of these made, at least by Conn. So I'll go ahead and start that off. So Conn made 300 contrabass Sarrusophones in the key of E-flat, of which half went to the U.S. Quartermaster Corps. So 150 of those 300 went to go be used by the military. So some of them were for public purchase. So they started manufacturing in 1921 after some U.S. personnel over in France saw the French military bands using Sarrusophones of all sizes, from soprano to contrabass, kind of taking the place of the oboe, the bassoon, the contrabassoon, and the marching band, because those are expensive instruments. They're temperamental. They're made out of wood. At that time, they would have definitely been made out of wood and nothing else. These days, you kind of have some of them made out of plastic or composite, half wood, half plastic. But besides the point, they're fragile instruments, and they would have been subjected to the elements. And the Sarrusophone was kind of the answer for that. So in about 1850s or so, maybe give or take 5 or 10 years, one way or the other, Gautrat and Quenon put out a patent for the Sarrusophone. Actually, I think the guy's name was Pierre Augustin, who kind of made the patent. Well, put out a patent for the Sarrusophone. And this was very, very shortly after the saxophone. Here, just for an example, I've got a soprano sax right here. Right after the saxophone had its patent put out. So, and the key work to the saxophone and the Sarrusophone are very, very similar. I'm going to grab a neck strap. This is making me a little nervous, just because this instrument is worth so much. I'm not going to tell you how much the guy paid for it, but let's just say I definitely want to treat it really nicely. So you can see right here, they've got key pearls. So you can probably take a wild guess. C, B, A, G. G sharp is right there. And then you have side B flat, side C, F, E, D, C, E flat. And then this right here, that's actually high D. There are no palm keys on this thing. And then in this right hand, so we already have G sharp. This is low E, so it activates that right there. Or C sharp, I should say. I'm sorry. And then this is low B. And on the back right here, I'm trying to get out that is low B flat. So, oh, and there's the third octave key, the second octave key, and then there's another one right down here. That's the first octave key. So, kind of like a cross between a contrabassoon and a saxophone as far as register keys go. You do use some octave keys, so to say, on contrabassoon, and the fingering system is, like I said, 95% identical to the saxophone. So the only thing that's different, this is the vocal. It is a lot different than your average bassoon or contrabassoon vocal. It's got a brace right there. This one has seen better days as it is bent. I'm sure you can see that. A repair tech could take that out, but this is not my instrument, so I'm not going to be doing that. So yeah, and before I play for you, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the avenues in which it has played in. So it's been in just about every genre of music, believe it or not, from marching band, as you can probably guess. John Philip Sousa, for sure, had a contrabass sarrusophone in his band. Fillmore definitely had a contrabass sarrusophone, and his I want to say it was the Marching 100. And I want to say he also had a bass sarrusophone as well. That is identical to the range of the bass saxophone. So that goes down to concert A flat. So it was used in classical music as well, kind of around the time when the contrabassoon wasn't a very viable instrument. So like 1850s to around the turn of the 20th century. Ravel wrote for the contrabass sarrusophone, and Rhapsody Espagnola, and Scheherazade, the one that has a really pretty bassoon solo in it. The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Dukas. So that's kind of that's classical, but that also leads into film just a little bit, because that's where everybody has mainly heard this piece from. Fantasia, Sorcerer Mickey, with the brooms and everything, the dancing brooms and the bassoons and whatnot. So that was originally scored for, there's a contrabassoon solo in there, and that was originally scored for contrabass sarrusophone. And I'll play a little bit of that here in a second, but let's see, its use, so it's been in concert band, obviously. So Granger used it in his Children's March. I think I already said Sousa used it, and then I'm trying to see, I have some notes over here I'm looking at. In film, so I think most of you are familiar with the film Tombstone with Robin Williams, and you know, I'll Be Your Huckleberry with Doc Holliday and that. So in Bruce how do I pronounce that? Broughton. In Bruce Broughton's score, he wrote for the contrabass sarrusophone to replace the contrabassoon because it wasn't quote, it wasn't guttural enough. So I'll talk about that here in just a second. And I have a double reed, which this is actually a sarrusophone reed. So I guess I'll go ahead and give a comparison. So I thought, I mean I had played bassoon and contrabassoon as well. So I have some contrabassoon reeds, and I thought maybe these would fit. So these are my contrabassoon reeds. And that's the sarrusophone reed. These are pretty much butt to butt. I made this one, and then this is a much wider one. This was made by one of my teachers, so this is them butt to butt. Pretty much butt to butt. The blade is much longer, the tube is much longer, and to be fair, the aperture which you put it on the, you know, the exit bore of the reed, it doesn't even fit. Yeah, I can't even fit it on there. It is too loose. And there goes that reed. That's like a $30 reed. It's alright, it's fine. But, and so to talk a little bit about the Conn contrabass sarrusophone. So, obviously Conn wasn't an entity in the 1850s, or if it was, I mean, I'm not super caught up on my early Conn lore, but if it was, I want to say actually Conn started making instruments in the late 1880s, early 1890s. So when the sarrusophone came into existence around 1850s or so, Conn was an instrument manufacturer. So there was Gautreaux and Quenon, which made some sarrusophones. Yvette and Schaefer, also known as Buffet Crampon, it was a subsidiary of Buffet Crampon. They made some sarrusophones. And then Orsi made some sarrusophones. They made a lot of the higher pitched sarrusophones as well. The higher pitched sarrusophones, you know, your E flat, you know, your sopranino, soprano, alto, you know, even down to about baritone. They're kind of rare. It's mainly the contrabass sarrusophone that you do see, because they were kind of made popular by Conn, and that's how the American market really saw them, or the American consumer, I should say. So that, and they were used in some jazz formats, some rock and roll. Trying to think. Frank Zappa actually wrote for contrabassoon in some of his pieces, I guess. I guess Frank Zappa wrote symphonies, which I did not know that. I just know him as you know, Penis Land and all that other fun stuff that he does. Purple Lagoon. That's a super good album, by the way, or a super good tune. Michael Brecker plays a solo on that. Check that out. So Zappa wrote for the contrabass sarrusophone, and some of his pieces such as Think It Over, Big Swifty, Grand Wazoo, and then in the 20s, Sidney Bechet played contrabass sarrusophone, mainly known for playing soprano saxophone, but he played contrabass sarrusophone on a tune called Mandy Make Up Your Mind, and you can hear that on YouTube, although he denies ever playing it. And then I don't know if I talked about how many of these were made. I might have. If I go back and look at this, I might be like, dang, Sam, you're dumb. But 300 of the Conn E-flat contrabass sarrusophone were made, starting production in 1921, going up till about as late as 1936. So for 300 of these to be made, and keep in mind half of them went to the U.S. Quartermaster Corps. So for 150 of these to be in U.S. open market, you know, obviously now I'm sure all 300 of them are kind of, you know, out there. Keep in mind it's been about almost 100 years since the end of the production. It's definitely been over 100 years since the beginning of the production. But you gotta think how many of these were destroyed. You know, schools had them, universities have them. I think the University of Illinois actually had a sarrusophone ensemble at one point. And so like soprano sarrusophone all the way up to, I think, a contrabass in C. And I think they even had a tenor rothophone. And rothophones are like sarrusophones but wrapped in a saxophone configuration. So, but anyways, trying to think. So anyway, so this specific instrument is nickel plated. So you got to think, out of 300 of them, which most of them were either silver or lacquer. Some of them had silver and gold plate. I know there's a guy that I'm acquaintances with in Indianapolis who has one that is silver with gold inlay, has a really fancy, you know, thing going on up here. Floral engravings. The engraving on this one isn't super complicated. It just says, I don't know if you can see that, Made by CG Conn. License Elkhart, Indiana, USA. Real simple. I have a feeling this one is probably one of the later ones, because you kind of see the floral engravings and whatnot around the New Wonder 1, New Wonder 2. So that's kind of around the era of the 20s. It's around, I've seen this very, you know, kind of just very plain Jane, CG Conn licensed, Elkhart, Indiana, kind of around like the transitional model from like the New Wonder 2 to the 6M or the 10M or the 12M, whatever. It was a transitional model, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't think any of these had naked lady engravings on them. If there is, and anybody knows how to get in contact with me, I'd love to see one, because that's really freaking cool. But if I had to take a wild guess, I didn't date this one. This is V309. So maybe there were a couple more of these made after the fact. But I know this is a later rendition of, you know, CG Conn engravings. So not really anything special. Anyways, so I'm gonna give this a little tootsie for you. The range on this is comparable to that of a contrabass saxophone. So, sounding D flat 1, you can get some harmonics out of it. I haven't figured them out yet. I can get up to, I think, a high written B flat. So I'll do some sound examples with the Sarrusophone reed and then the soprano sax mouthpiece. The soprano sax mouthpiece is actually it's gonna take a little bit of time, because this isn't corked. Some of them have, okay, so some background lore before I start. The reason that vocal is like that is because Conn made Sarrusophone mouthpieces. If you look up some pictures, you might see some people playing the contrabass Sarrusophone with a single reed mouthpiece. It's about the size of an old alto sax mouthpiece. It has a little tiny aperture at the bottom where the exit bore would be, and you can slip that on. I've talked with Paul Cohen a little bit about that, and some other people that have single reeded mouthpieces for Sarrusophone, and the intonation is not super great. It does make it sound a little bit more like a saxophone, but the intonation is not super great. So, and then I have this Selmer S80D with a Lavaz soft on it that I'm going to demonstrate. I have some packing material I'm going to wrap around the vocal, and it does work. It's a little loose, but it works. So I'm going to first start out with, oh yeah, the mouthpiece goes on here. That's why this is thick like that, and it would have taken an alto saxophone reed. So. But anyways, so I'm gonna start with the Sarrusophone reed. It's a good crow. Now keep in mind, I'm still trying to figure this instrument out. I have, for the most part, kind of figured it out, but the intonation in the upper register is a little squirrely. So. I tried using alternate fingerings. That just makes it really stupidly sharp. Trying to do the Sorcerer's Apprentice off my head on saxophone fingerings. I know how to play it on bassoon, but trying to think what else there is. Oh. That's one thing this has, or doesn't have. This G sharp is not articulated. So if I press down, if I open G sharp right there, and I press down another key, that G sharp can stay open. And it doesn't have an alternate F sharp, no palm keys, no nothing like that. But Beethoven for you. But yeah, so there's that. It can be a very pretty sounding instrument. So it can have a very pretty sound. Hold on. It also has a spit key down here, which is super useful. If I could get in, there we go. But anyways, so I'm gonna try it with this soprano saxophone mouthpiece real quick, and then I'll wrap up this video. This was a super cool thing to do. I've always wanted to play one of these, and actually even have one in my possession for a little bit, which is super cool even in of itself. Alrighty, so that's pretty on there. I can't guarantee how super in tune this is going to be. But after playing this for a little bit, I have found that with a soprano sax mouthpiece, or maybe even a single reed mouthpiece, this has a little bit more of a contrabass saxophone-esque tone. The tone is a little bit more like a saxophone, which is really cool. I haven't decided which setup I'm going to use, because I'm probably going to be the one playing this in my sax choir. It is super interesting. I really do. I like the timbre of the single reed mouthpiece, but also I can really appreciate the timbre of the double reed. The double reed. You know, it sounds a little bit more like a contrabassoon. This sounds a little bit more like a contrabass saxophone, but. Let me know what you guys think. So I'm gonna wrap this video up here, and I guess I could show you guys the case real quick. So that's the case it comes in. It's not really anything special. It's super long. The inside, it holds it. And there's a little spot for the vocal. Other than that, it's not really anything too special. There aren't any really aftermarket Sarrusophone cases, unless you go and get like a Pelican case and transform that into a Sarrusophone case. But nobody actually markets an aftermarket Sarrusophone case. And there, I think Van Doren does make Sarrusophone reeds, but those are at the tune of like $70 for one. Contraforte reeds also work very well, and you can also just make your own Sarrusophone reeds. But anyways, guys, thanks. This has been a super cool video. I really did enjoy showing this magnificent beast off. I'll have this for an indefinite amount of time. Not really sure how long, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's kind of been a longer one, but like and subscribe. But anyways, but yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave like a comment down below or whatnot, and I do see all of them. So if you want to see anything next, I'll see what I can do. Things kind of just stumble upon me, and I post them as I find time. That was gross. But yeah, guys. So this has been the Conn E-flat Contrabass Sarrusophone, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.